everyone, it's Emma again, the founder of the HR Big Meet, and I am today talking to one of our fabulous panelists. So leading up to the event, I am coming on live, totally infiltrating your feed with news of the big meet so that you get a chance to meet people who are going to be there, so that you get a chance to understand that it doesn't need to be a scary experience to come along. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the amazing Zoe Waters, who is going to be part of our panel. Hey, Zoe.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so good.
I'm Zoe. If you haven't seen this face before, met me, I help transform minds, businesses, and life through HR coaching and recently AI. There's a little thing that you probably need to know about me is I'm a bit unorthodox and I'm steeped in spiritual seeking, and that's my education of the last 3 years. So I'm always looking at the lens through what more is possible and how I, as a person, am effective and connected to myself first of all before I can connect with others. So that's a little snapshot about me, but obviously the audience can ask anything they want. I am an open book.
Fabulous. And I love that so much because I'm a fundamental believer in that as well, Zoe, that leadership always starts with your awareness of yourself.
Self, yeah.
Always does. And
Yeah.
if we could solve the leadership capability crisis, which has been around for absolutely ever, certainly as long as I've been doing this thing called HR, then that's how we would solve it, is by building, I think, by building awareness of self. So Zoe, you were the catalyst for my idea around the panel discussion this year. You were the thing that I thought I get the tingles because I'm really excited for this conversation that we're going to have, which centers around the parts of us that we ignore in leadership because for many reasons, but just to summarize, probably they're not the norm, or they're not widely accepted, or they're seen as weak or woo or feminine. And I've talked to you about my experiences of like spirituality. So this element of spirituality and how we probably ignore that in leadership, because what's that got to do with our work and having impact in the world? So what's your take on that?
Gosh, oh my God. So first of all, there's a couple of things I'm going to pick up on. So if anybody else has tingles, do you know what it means? It means that there's a source, there's a divinity. You might call it God, you might call it universe, you might call it intuition or gut instinct, whatever it is. Your body is a GPS system. So when you're getting certain somatic responses, physical responses, it's usually in response to the conversation that you're having. I love that. And I've got it now because I'm talking
Yes,
about it and I'm getting there.
me too.
I want to call it as people have either shoved a bucket of water over you or the tingles. It's a confirmation. And so the innate intelligence, so dipping back into the shadows and the parts of ourselves, ultimately there's an internal intelligence within us. And it's all linked to this tingling, this sensation, which is innate wisdom. It's the innate wisdom because you've been here before and the soul is reincarnated. If you don't believe in reincarnation, then that's maybe a little bit more difficult to get with the program. So for the readers and audience and listeners and whoever I might be speaking to, take what resonates for you. I can only speak from my lens and my wisdom and my experience. But ultimately, we have parts of us that aren't lovable or not good enough. That's where it basically boils down to. So we have to learn to love those parts, which comes back to the self-mastery. So you talked about sort of leadership and your journey, spirituality. All of these things are interconnected because we're not separate. We're one being, right? But we've got different parts of us that we like to show in work, outside of work, wherever. We've got a mask, a social mask that we like to present to the world. But ultimately, we're one person. We've got insecurities and traumas, and these can range across our lifespan, previous lives, if you believe in that. And our job is to heal them. And how do we heal them? We acknowledge them and love them as they are. When I ask people the question of, first of all, name 3 people you love, yourself is not normally in those 3 people. And then the second part is unconditional love. It means without conditions. Yet we don't love ourselves unconditionally because we've got these conditions that I must be a certain way, a certain type, how we look, how we sound, how we show up. And we are in a world that can be very unkind and judgmental. If we can only take that control all within us and say that I give myself permission, I give myself validation, I give myself approval, it's not dependent on an external thing, then we become more able to navigate the moments in life which are more challenging, which somebody might be pointing the finger at us. And you can't
Mhm.
ever control what other people say or do.
Yeah.
Mel Robbins, if you've not listened to a podcast or read her book, Let Them Theory, it's magical. Just let people do what they're going to do because they're going to
Yes.
anyway. It's about self management and connectedness with self, accepting oneself, loving oneself unconditionally. And therefore, we can weather any storm or challenge or delight along the route because we're steeped in the absolute knowledge and knowing that we are enough and we are loved. And that makes a huge difference when you're in confidence in how you show up. You stop giving a beep about what the world thinks about you.
You're only censoring
Well,
that because it's
well,
LinkedIn.
yeah.
You're not bothered.
Beep, beep.
I really love that because I think we can, that kind of like that internal knowing, a lot of us get disconnected from our intuition. And not only that, but I think we're actually, so many people that I work with, I know this for myself, I know that intuitively something is the way to go. So say I'm talking from a work context. So as a HR professional, I know intuitively that if you do something, something's going to happen as a result. Now, when you are operating a paradigm that says your feelings, your intuition actually isn't as valuable as this data, like how often are we talking about we need data in HR? People don't come with data. Like you can't, I don't think you can you? Maybe you tell me you can. You can measure intuition. I don't know. But because we're intuitive, we know something's going to happen, but we haven't got any data to back it up. That can almost diminish
Yeah.
or devalue our message. And I think that's, yeah, I'm so excited for this conversation at the event about like how do we remember that we know what we're talking about? How do we tap into that intuition when it isn't valued?
Yeah, I suppose there's also a legal component. When you work in HR and there is governance and there is logistics around what is right or wrong in the law, that's very black and white. But
Yes,
the truth is, HR operate between these two polarities.
100%.
And there's every shade of every colour and all things in it. And what I will say is that when we talk about energy, I'm not going to talk about gender here. I'm going to talk about energy. So, if we look at a masculine and a feminine energy, also known as yin and yang, these are two energies, and I'll define them as being as the feminine and doing as the masculine.
Yeah.
We do a lot, right? So the doing is gathering all the stuff and doing what we're doing, whether it's gathering data and doing all this kind of stuff here, and we're very on.
Yes.
We forget to be. But in all truth, you can only feel intuition and you can only feel the innate intelligence within when you're in being. So we have to be still and silent. We have to create space, container to lean into that wisdom and experience. Now, lots of organizations will say, the law would say, yeah, the law does say that. However, I say that there's a moral compass that you have within you. Ever been familiar with the inner development goals? And if anyone wants to check them out, it's innerdevelopmentgoals.com. They have a framework and they talk about these 5 pillars, and one of them is around being. And it's a really good framework to look at how we can adopt certain things in it, if not all, as parts of ourselves to be able, because acting is one of them, right? So this energy of doing is really important because we have to have momentum, we have to get
Yes.
some outcomes and some impact, right? But the part about being is listening to that wisdom.
Yeah.
And when we can get these two in parallel, because women are typically, and I'm going to speak very specifically to women here, and I'm sorry that this may upset some people or trigger them, women have been taught to survive in a predominantly masculine environment. We are told that we need to be all, we need to have it all sorted from running a household to fulfilling the job. We need to be in board level roles. We need to be doing. Therefore, what we're doing is becoming more masculine in our energy. Actually, the feminine is about sitting back and nurture, about being, so that we can just listen to ourselves and stay connected to ourselves. And when we are, we'll get more intuition, we'll get more answers, we'll get more intelligence that will help guide and balance out these two polarities. Men, on the other hand, are not taught to be more in a feminine energy,
Yes.
which is more about you need to also be in the being energy. So it's quite a fascinating topic. Michelle Mees is quite a wizard on this. She talks about balanced leadership, and her book is about that inclusion and balanced leadership. So that's quite a good read if for any listeners that want to dive more into that. And I would also say, if you're listening to this and there is somewhere in you that's also happening a sensation, you know that this is resonating with you, and you may not understand it, and that's also okay. But
Yes.
people will have a response, a physical reaction, and they might not realize it. Being in the being, you can understand what your body's telling you. Am I on point? Am I off point? Your compass. Am I on the track or am I off the track? Your body will tell you. It's a GPS.
I've got the tingles. Oh my God, Zoe.
There
And
you go.
we've got a
Yes,
comment from Christina here as well. Totally agree. We need both energies and importantly get better at transitioning in between the two.
yes,
Many
Christine.
people are stuck in doing and not able to switch off. This is why burnout is on the increase. I am so on board with that, particularly as women. And the HR Big Meet is a women's only event specifically for this. Now, and as you're talking, I wonder actually if the title of our panelist talk is like embracing the feminine for leadership or something. Do you know?
Yeah.
Because the rest of the panel we've got you from like your perspective. There is an expert on the feminine cycles and how that interacts with our body and what that kind of can give us access to at different times of the month. We've got a somatics practitioner all about the body, and also a lady who is going to be talking about the collaboration piece, which tends to be more of a feminine energy too, and how we can tap into what tends to be a feminine trait in terms of collaboration and building community and that kind of thing. And then me, as talking from my perspective of being fairly new to all of this, which old 20s me would have been like, oh, this is a bit weird, what's this? But actually having dabbed my toe in it and embraced it for myself, the certainly the spiritual piece of just having belief that there is something bigger than me looking out for me, that shows up. It's shown up this weekend. I've had money come to me that I was worried about, and it's turned up like unexpectedly. It's for me being able to let go and know that I'll be okay. That's my genuine lived experience. So I'm really excited to raise the profile of conversations like these and hopefully give something to people that they can take away and be like, maybe I could embrace my feminine like a little bit more. That would be a great outcome.
What comes to mind, Emma, is no one can do this for you.
Yeah.
Spirituality is a journey. And so, another word for it, where I come from as a transpersonal psychologist, is beyond the ego. Now, most of us would, in the corporate world, might, and I did a study on this last year and would always be happy to share that result, is around the perception of spirituality within HR. Most of the people that I interviewed considered themselves spiritual, but they couldn't bring it to work. Interesting fact, Maslow, hierarchy of needs, we all know it.
Yes.
We all know self-actualization, top of that triangle. And actually, that means to transcend, right? Self-transcendence.
Yes.
Abraham Maslow is the founder of spiritual psychology, a co-founder. So we know that this is a very credible source. We know Maslow and the impact that it still has, despite its critique, still in the workplace today, is
Yes.
a humanistic psychologist. This was all his jam. So all we need to do is to connect some dots to help understand spirituality is not religion. It's not,
Yeah.
it's a faith base bigger than something bigger than oneself, to transcend beyond one's ego, connectedness to self. This is the principle of why spirituality may be deemed as a little bit woo. No one can do it for you. You've got to go on a path and a journey. You've got to go down some rabbit holes. You've got to expand your consciousness around it in the way that's right and true for you. I started 20 years ago. I didn't know it was called spirituality. I didn't know it was
Yes.
meditation. I didn't know what it was labeled. I just knew that I felt better. I felt more connected. I saw things differently. My perspective started to shift. So everyone has to find their own way about it. And sure, people like me can nudge people on and say, give them a direction of travel, go that route, keep going. But truthfully, it's a path that everyone walks down. And you might not even call it spirituality. You might call it enlightenment. You might call it awakened. You might, in fact, it starts with a question, which is, what's it all about? When you start asking that kind of question to yourself, what is this all about? And I think age comes into it. That's when you start to go, you
Really?
start to
Yeah.
question everything.
Yes.
And you have more questions than answers.
Yes.
And that's when you know you've started your journey. And it can be a gradual journey. It can be a smack in the face because you've had a significant emotional event that's happened that's triggered this kind of quest, this search. My next book is called A Search for Nirvana, actually, and it's going to talk about exactly what we're talking about and giving the nudges of moving into the direction of spiritual seeking as a leader, because
Yes.
actually we're all leaders. We're all leaders of our own journey, our own life, not necessarily in the corporate world, but we're all fulfilling a role of leadership, especially as a parent. You're leading others
Yeah.
to grow up. Anyway, I could be on a soapbox for a long time, Emma. Jump
I
in.
could listen to you for a long time. I'm so excited. So yeah, how difficult is it going to be to try and manage the timing of the panel on the day where we've got I'm so excited for this conversation. Like I say, it really does give me the tingles. I just think there's so much potential in this for us as leaders, as HR professionals, to find that. You talked about external validation, for us to find a way to validate ourselves.
Yeah.
We won't rely on it from other people. Again, so many of us like look to that external validation. Am I successful? Do I have this? How do I compare to other people? Just the power that comes from holding all of that internally and knowing that you're okay. I just wish you could package that up. But like you say, it's a journey, and perhaps some people's journeys will start at the event. Zoe, thank you so much for coming along. I don't know if my internet is just frozen because now I've had a frozen screen of me doing something like that. I genuinely, I can't wait for this conversation. If this conversation has the one that Zoe and I've just had feels exciting to you and you're like, I really this is intriguing. I've had some tingles myself. I'd like to know more. You can grab your ticket to the HR Big Meet with the QR code that is in the corner there.
Yeah. You can talk to us.
You can
In
talk to
real
us.
life.
You can feel our energy in real life.
I can't wait. It'll be really exciting. And anybody that's thinking about going, I've been, and that's how me and Emma connected. And it was a really great day. Not only did I feel really empowered, but I also met some people that I wouldn't have probably come across. And it is a day of wisdom. And if you think you haven't got time, I'm going to ask you to check your screen time because there's probably a good 7 hours on there. You can spend time.
I love the little wink. Amazing. Grab a ticket, everyone. We want to see you there.